Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Utilities and Commerce special hearing for May 18th, 2016. This is a special oversight hearing that we called to look into some of the issues surrounding the Frontier-Verizon merger and the switchover. I want to thank everybody who is joining us both in person and also those of you who are joining us on our streamed broadcast, which is being streamed online. And we are a few members short of a quorum. We want to start on time as much as possible, and there's also some other members who are going to be joining us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to just wait a couple minutes to let some more members get here, and then we will go right into the hearing. So again, thank you, everybody, and we should start very shortly. Okay, well, I don't want to keep people waiting who are both so kind to have come up to Sacramento to testify, and also those people who are watching us online. So even though some of the members are trickling in, we're going to begin. Before the witnesses step forward, what I'm going to do is go into some ground rules for today's hearing. So first of all, there are a number of people joining us who don't typically come and talk to the legislature. We welcome you. We value your presence tremendously, and we thank you for being here. Typically, before the legislature, there are very formal rules having to do with the length and amount of time that you can talk before us. But this committee tends to be a little bit more informal. We tend to value your input, and we value your stories. But just do be mindful of time when we get to the public comment portion of this hearing. Secondly, to the witnesses and members, again, stressing on that informality, often witnesses come before legislative hearings and they have very, very vast prepared statements that they read into the microphone. We don't want that. We don't need that here. We definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear your candid thoughts and your prepared remarks. But we also want it to be a give and take. We want this panel to be able to ask you questions as they go and to interrupt as you go. So if I believe that any witnesses, if I see some questions from the panel in the middle of a presentation, we will probably just stop the witness and ask those questions as you go along. And please don't take that to be rude. That's just the way we do things in this committee. Obviously, the background of this hearing has to do with the transition from some of Verizon's telecommunications properties to Frontier. The FCC approved this settlement, the agreement for the merger or the divestment in September 2015. The state of California further approved it in December 2015, and the transition began in April. And that is what we are here to discuss, is the problems that have been reported in connection with this merger. We have had thousands of complaints from customers having to do with intermittent and unreliable phone services, including dropped calls, bad reception, and no service whatsoever. We've had those same problems that have affected governments, including lots of local governments, individuals and small businesses. Just a taste of what some of the things that we've heard from, and we've got a whole stack here. You had a police department which lost its business lines, forcing it to transfer 911 calls to another department until service was restored. You had a school that could not reach a mother after her disabled child fell at school because the mother's phone line wasn't working. You had a restaurant that could not take payments for takeout using credit or debit cards. And of course, if you're a restaurant that lives or dies, small business on takeout, not being able to process your credit cards is a big deal. My office in Sacramento has helped with dozens of customers who have processed their complaints through us. And we sense the frustration with those consumers. We've heard about long hold times, delayed repairs, and people are arguing that this is having an adverse impact on the health, safety, and economy of their communities. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to do just one more round of housekeeping, and then we can have the witnesses come forward. I want to introduce a special member of the committee today, and that is Melissa Melendez, who represents the Lake Elsinore area. She does not sit on this committee, but she cares so much about these issues, and she's heard from so many of her constituents that she has taken her afternoon to come and sit on this committee, which is rather extraordinary. And we'll also be joined by Mr. Patrick O'Donnell, who represents the Long Beach area, who again is not a member of this committee, but cares so much about these issues that he is joining us here today. So with that, let's get right into the witnesses. We typically have a statement by the vice chair, but he's not here right now. We will give him that time for that statement in due course. Let's ask the witnesses to come forward, both from the company and from the California Public Utilities Commission. Thank you. So we have before us, I have some biographies on these witnesses. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but just so that everybody knows who is here before us. To my left and to the camera's right is Melinda White, who is the area president for Frontier's West region. And she is very, very versed in these issues, and everybody who has dealt with her so far has been very impressed by her ability to know what's going wrong and to solve these problems. We also have with us, on my right, on the camera's left, Mr. Tim Sullivan, who is the executive director of the California Public Utilities Commission, which has jurisdiction over these issues. Now, some of the questions that this committee wants them to answer, and we're going to expect you to address in your remarks, is how did this happen? Why did this happen? When will this be fixed? And what can we do, we meaning the legislature, the regulatory community, to prevent this from happening again? We know that there's a number of utility mergers, telecom mergers specifically, that are proposed or probably going to happen in the near future. And we want to make sure that every time one of these happens that we don't go through problems again. We're also going to be asking the company how many transition-related complaints you've received, what's the nature of them, what are your non-transition-related complaints looking like, how many have you resolved, talk to us about the different types of services that are involved, how many trouble tickets did you inherit from Verizon, what's the best way for people watching out there to contact you if they're still having issues, what are you doing to address compensation, is there a standard compensation, what are you doing to repair customer relationships? Of course, that's probably not the business of this committee, but it might be something you want to go into. And to what extent is this going to affect the contractual relationships that customers have with Frontier? To the CPUC, we're going to expect you to address how many complaints you've received. What are you doing to address the complaints you receive? A question that's near and dear to my heart is, would there be another state agency that might be better adept at answering these consumer-related complaints? In what areas of the state have you seen to be most affected by these outages? So without further ado, let's go right into it. And you can start your remarks if you wish, Ms. White. And we will, as I said before, we'll pepper you with questions as you go through. Sure. That's just the nature of this committee. So welcome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I want to start by letting you know that as an organization and as the leader of the organization in California, we are sincerely sorry for the disruption. We're sincerely sorry for any impact to any of our customers. And while, as you've seen in the press, in the scheme of the whole, while it may not look like a large number, every customer is important. One customer out of service is one too many. And as we have moved through the last 5+ weeks, that has been what has been top of mind for us, one customer at a time, taking care and resolving the issues. As Assemblymember Gatto mentioned, April 1 was our start date. I won't go into who we are or how we got here. I think most of you already understand that. I have visited with many of you in the past. April 1, when we did the flash cutover, the conversion, we knew that it was the largest flash cutover ever done in the history of telecom. What does that mean? It just simply means that we knew that this 3-state, California, Texas, and Florida flash cutover was going to be very, very large and would include a lot of moving pieces. Some of the cutover had been done previously. For example, we had already cut over the core network. We had done that a couple of weeks earlier just to ensure that we had the network on the Frontier part of the equation so that we could start to get in place our back-end systems, our provisioning, and the things that will allow us to operate and talk to the many, many devices in the field. As you probably know, where we were not able to then go further is waiting until day one in order to be able to see and talk to the many devices that are in the field and the customer prim along the plant that you drive by every day, or some that you don't see that's underground, and the boxes that we call the hubs where many of our electronics sit. When we did the flash cutover, this is what happened. 3 things went wrong. We knew there would be some gaps, again, the largest ever. The first thing that went wrong is that with over 440 million data extracts across the 3 states, you can assume half of those are in California, the very big state of the 3. Of the over 200 million data extracts that we brought over from Verizon on day 1, there was some corrupt data sitting in some of the fields. That means that in some fields where we were expecting 25 characters, there may have only been 23. It means that instead of a 145, it might have had a 192, or it might have had a letter instead of a number. The second thing that went differently from what we had anticipated is there were several SKUs of network terminals where the serial numbers that we received on the manifest of millions of serial numbers for the network terminals that sit on the side of the house or the business.
And if I may, Ms. White, we have a question already, and that's from Mr. Clark.
All right. So I'm not quite sure what you meant by, and I don't even remember exactly the term, but number extracts. Is this like phone numbers, or what is it that you're trying to transfer over?
Yes, sir. This is any information, whether it's customer account information, address, facilities, records, anything that has to do with bringing over who is a customer and what is required in order for their service to work. That is any number of data extracts.
Okay, so it would be the phone number.
It could also be the phone number.
And it could be the routing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you say you didn't get the extracts, what you're saying is you didn't get the information on who all your customers were and how to service them.
We received millions, hundreds of millions of data extracts, and there were parts of that were corrupt.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you have the corrupt data, it means that the people necessarily might not be able to make a connection to the system.
It means that when our back-end systems began talking to the equipment to say, now you're on the Frontier network and you have a network terminal in your home or a set-top in your home, and our back-end begins saying, this is us telling you what services should be active so that we can ultimately bill you properly. If the data extracts are in error, then that would be where things would start to go the wrong way.
So the phones wouldn't necessarily be connected.
So we would lose different services as a result of that.
So different services. So it could be data. It could be internet. It could be
Yes.
TV
Yes.
as well. Okay. Thank you.
So we're talking to the network terminal. The data extracts are in error, and when we're saying to the terminal, you are supposed to be provisioning or providing Ultimate TV, voice service, as well as 50/50 FiOS network, then if the data is in error, then we would not be able to speak to the terminal properly.
And was it an issue of so we put in layman's terms in a term that even a lawmaker can understand. You had two databases. You had the data from Verizon. You then get it. Some of the data is corrupt. It's got errors in it. Was it as simple as the data saying that customer had not paid, that they were not current on their account, or was it something different? Was it that they needed a certain serial number to match up to connect that service to turn it on, and that serial number was not matching up, or was it both?
It was for the out-of-service piece, because if it were just about the customer, have you paid your bill or not, the service would have probably continued to work. We wouldn't have learned later that there would be a glitch on the billing. It was us being able to talk to the devices so that the customer would actually be receiving what they had signed up for when they were with Verizon. So then that, in addition to the serial number piece, and unfortunately, and many of you probably familiar with Long Beach and the fact that we've had a seemingly higher number of issues in Long Beach. And the serial number issue did impact one of our network terminals manufactured by Motorola. Motorola network terminals are throughout California, but for some reason, and I'm sure part of it was timing of when the FiOS service was launched in Long Beach way back when, the Motorola terminal was mostly what's in Long Beach. So that's why we've had a higher number of incidents in Long Beach. So those two things were the technical gaps that we experienced. And then, unfortunately, even though we thought best laid plans, we, as part of the acquisition, over 4,000 employees, as you know, came over to Frontier from Verizon. And, of course, step one was train them on the Frontier systems, the platforms, the processes, including provisioning, service, and support. And on day one, we began that training, and what the plan had included and that we implemented was we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of customer service reps and support reps available to answer calls based upon volume, knowing full well from past experience that just a conversion alone drives the phone. Who are you? What can I expect? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to stop you there, ma'am.
Yes.
When you talk about the customer service reps and having an adequate number to service the complaints that come in, what I have been told from my constituents and businesses in particular who are losing money every day that these lines don't work is that they can't get a hold of someone. They can't get a person. So could you elaborate a little bit on how what you've put in place to accommodate all of these concerns, particularly for those who are indeed losing money when these lines are out. Thank you.
Yes. So as part of the conversion plan, we added 5,346 or 26 additional call center reps. Some of them were onshore and some of them were offshore. We made the decision, even though we are very proud of being a 100% U.S.-based workforce, we knew because the size of this conversion that we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of resources. So we decided to use the same offshore that Verizon has used for many years, thinking obviously that they already know the product. They've probably taken calls from California, Texas, and Florida customers, and that would be the best path. Unfortunately, much to our dismay, it did not work out, and it was a very disappointing experience. Part of it is because the same issues that I'm describing to you now also happened in Texas and Florida. So that's a lot of incremental volume of calls that we had not anticipated. Yes?
Yeah, Mr. O'Donnell, you're recognized.
Thank you. So I come from Long Beach, and we spent Saturday together, did we not? And I appreciate you coming out because we had a large community forum with a good number of people out, and we had your own technicians in that room who were actually helping people on site with their problems at their homes. So I appreciate Frontier for helping with that. But I think we also need to look, there's a significant backlog. I'm still hearing, I had a neighbor walk up the other day. It was Sunday. She came up and said, hey, I stayed home several hours on Friday. I had a scheduled appointment with Frontier, and no one showed up. Can you talk to us about what's going on with the service backlog? Do you see a timeline? Help me understand that the constituents in my district who essentially have been left digital orphans can get their service back up.
Yep. Did I fully answer your question? Okay, so
and I don't mean to overwhelm you, but yeah, you have to answer Ms. Melendez's question, and then Mr. O'Donnell's. And my question is tied in with this as well, so you might as well just do it all at once.
Okay.
Which is, you're having this big changeover. It's a big merger. You're acquiring a lot of different stuff and databases and hardware that's very difficult to use, and it's very technically involved. And I heard what you said about sending people on training.
Yes.
And hindsight is always 20/20. But my question would be, why would you send people to training when they were so desperately needed to answer customer service? And I think it ties into Ms. Melendez's question and Mr. O'Donnell's, which is you have an American workforce that was promised to all of us. They're all here, and these are experts. These are people who live and breathe telecom, and they've answered these calls for people. And then we know there's going to be a changeover, and there's always hiccups. And these hiccups happen, and now people call, and they're getting an overseas call center that is just driving them crazy, or getting nobody. And your workforce is all off in training. So I think that ties into both of these questions, and you may answer.
Sure. So the primary purpose of the training is because we changed systems. And while we could have put the Verizon employees on the phone, they would not have been able to help the customer beyond answering the phone.
Could they have helped better than the call center in the Philippines, in retrospect?
Well, if the question is, would you rather have the phone answered and not be helped, or have the phone eventually answered and not be helped, it's a tough question. And we had so many conversations internally of just that. Should we just go ahead and put the people on the phone and have them at least answer the phone? But then it would have been a different kind of issue for the customer. The challenge with the offshore, they were trained on our products and systems, yes, but they were not prepared or trained for the kind of technical issues that customers were calling in for. This is an IP system. This is an IP network. This is software. And FiOS, one of the great things about FiOS and what makes it so great for the future is it will continue to evolve. And what Verizon did, and I'm sure you already are aware of this, over the last 15 years, right, they built a network, and there's rev after rev after rev of software to continue evolving that. So all I'm saying is it's just not a simple, here is a product on a software network, and there is a base sort of formula on how you keep everything working. It's very complicated. The systems and processes that we then needed to train the folks on, and some are still in training, are how to talk to, how to provision, how to activate, how to actually make changes on the network, how to reboot the network through a system. So all different tools than what they used with Verizon.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you got to the core of my question, which again is I'm still hearing from my neighbors down the
Just
street.
getting
I'm
there.
hearing from my mother. Okay. What are you doing to address the backlog?
Yeah. So as a telecom provider, and I just want to mention that we start every day with a backlog. And you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that as part of moving into this conversion, we actually started with 16,000 orders in backlog and some change. Part of that was planned. We knew that that would be coming over from Verizon taking orders or trouble tickets before we came into the picture. We worked very closely with Verizon, and we tried to keep that to a number that would be manageable. 16,000 plus felt like a manageable number. I'm just telling you how we started, right? But then when we got to this place of, oh my gosh, the network terminals, they're not working, we can't talk to them, we can't even see them, then that made the 16,000 plus less than manageable. We have been working tirelessly since April 1, as we should, because when we have a customer out of service, that's a problem. And right now, well, as many of you already know, we've had some issues with VoIP. And today, as I sit here, thank heavens, even though one customer is too many, today we only have just over 200 customers still without VoIP. I hope one of them is not your mother. But if it is, give me the name and I'll see what I can do.
I don't want any special treatment.
No, I wouldn't. So I'm just, we are very carefully working the backlog as quickly as we can. Assemblymember Hadley sent me an example today of one that we missed. We went back, we saw the history on that. We have been to that customer's a couple of times, business. We actually resolved the issue. In that particular case, we believe it is the equipment on the customer side. We have techs out there as we speak, and I will give you a full comprehensive follow-up. In the business of what we do, there are all kinds of things that would result in getting behind. But it's, thank goodness, far and few between when we get to a situation where getting behind is driven by what I've just explained to you.
Great.
Which creates large volume.
Right. I'm still okay. So I've heard you say looks like we've really lowered the number of people who don't have voice.
Yes.
And I guess that would mean landline telephones.
Yes.
But the problems here are landline telephones. Often that's the elderly, because younger people tend to have cell phones. Maybe don't even use their landline too much. There's the television. There's been issues there. People can't get their formerly FiOS service, if you will, and people can't get their internet. So there's really been three breakdowns here in three different areas. And what's interesting about this problem is it isn't one problem. It's, each home has a different problem. So it's been kind of unique, and I'm sure that's been unique for you to address as well. But again, I really want to speak to that backlog, because I need to give my constituents confidence that they're going to get their outstanding issues addressed in a very timely fashion.
And before you answer that, because I think we all want you to answer Mr. O'Donnell's question on the backlog, I want to give you and those out there a sense of this backlog. So this is indicative of a letter that we've received. Very kind letter, very well written. And it says, Dear Mr. Gatto, we lost our landline phone and internet on April 25. I called Frontier and spent 82 minutes on hold on my cell phone with a tech person. They scheduled a tech to come out on April 30th. Meanwhile, I called again on the next day, the 26th and the 27th. My phone gave me a fast busy signal when it would not allow calls to go in or out. On April 29th, the phone was disconnected and no longer in service completely. Called again, Frontier, on April 30th and was transferred, and finally spoke with the billing department after half an hour on hold. We waited to see if someone had accidentally canceled my account. I was told that they did not. On the day that our tech was supposed to arrive, we waited all day, but the tech never showed. The next morning, which was May 1 already, I called 3 times, only to be hung up on each time. One call did offer to send a tech in another week, The fourth time I called Frontier, the person said that there was an issue in our area, and even if a text showed up, there was nothing they would be able to do. She also warned me that if I canceled my service, I would have to pay early termination fees. In total, we have been without our landline for 16 days. 16 days. So we're talking about the backlog of getting stuff back up. During this ordeal, I spent a total of 258 minutes on hold with Frontier. When I asked for a service credit, I was offered $21.86. Now, I've got a stack of letters like this. I'm not going to read them all, but when Mr. O'Donnell talks about a backlog, I think this is what he's talking about. 16 days to get everything restored. That's a mighty, mighty long time. And we want to know, are there other people who are still waiting for their service to be restored?